Aloha, I'm Felicia Miller Johnson, and I conduct work life video interviews with career professionals that become an all intuitive conversation. Aloha, and welcome to another episode of All Intuitive Conversation. I encourage individuals to live smart and ascend to new levels of work life success. So today I have the pleasure of connecting with the very first time, Annie. So let's bring her to the screen. Aloha, Annie.
Hey, Felicia, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing quite wonderful today.
Awesome. So, your background is completely blank. So, this is giving me a very clear shade. And I'm noticing you're also wearing white. So, I look forward to adding a little color to the situations I get to know
That's so
you.
interesting.
It is. So I just want you to know I've already taken note of that. So where are you contacting me from? Where are you at?
I'm currently in Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston, Massachusetts. Are you born and raised from Boston?
No, I'm actually from New York City, and then at some point I moved to Texas, and then I've been in Boston here, I think, for the last 6 years.
Okay. So right away, I have this female here on this path with this
Oh,
with this house here, just kind of journeying around, going to different places. But I will say the first thing that kind of interests me is that how do you go from and I will say this. I grew up in a military family and I graduated high school in Jersey and the East Coast, and I live currently now in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the East Coast is definitely different than the South. So, how did you go from New York to Texas? I want to do that first move.
Oh, yeah, that was difficult. I was 22 years old and I got married to my husband 8 months into the relationship,
Mm,
and he was doing a master's in Texas, and because of immigration issues and I had to get him a green card, I have to live with him to prove to the USCIS that we are legitimately married and in love with each other.
uh-huh.
He asked me, "Are you sure you want to move here? Life is different." And my attitude at 22, very naive, I said, if I can live on minimum wage in New York City, I can make it anywhere. So
Uh-huh.
I moved all the way there only to find that there's not that many jobs and you need a car to get around everywhere. I had a really rough time adjusting to life there.
Yeah, because it's different because like I said, I had lived in the South, like I said, I was born in Alabama, but like I said, my dad joined and I moved around. And when I came down, yeah, we moved to Texas as well. And I had found some similar struggles of just kind of like, like, what, how do we do this? And it does bring out this whole kind of character and living experience. So I'm gonna read to you what it says here on this card. It says, a windfall of abundance, wise counsel, or good fortune, an exciting career opportunity, a lucrative contract, significant purchases like a home or a vehicle. And so my question that comes to is when you were in Texas and like I said, you were open and thought, hey, I can live anywhere. Like I said, what they say, you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. What is the lesson that you learned from living in Texas?
I learned that job search is different depending on your geography. So here, here on the East Coast, it's like literally if you're alive and breathing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not disabled, you can get a job, right? In Texas, where I was in Lubbock, it was like more about who you know.
Mm.
So there, I was a transplant, right? I didn't know anybody. So I moved there and I had to ask a local, how do people get jobs here? And she was just like, well, you dress up nice, you go in, you say hello and ask if they are hiring. And so I followed her advice. And by the time I finished, I had 5 part-time jobs.
Mm.
So after a year, I was working 5 part-time jobs. So it's not as nice as just one full-time job, but I was making money. So that's what I
Similar,
learned there.
similar, because my very first job when I moved to Texas was a part-time job.
Yeah.
It was, and so it's interesting because then the next card here is this family that's traveling on this boat, kind of escaping something and just going to something new. But it's interesting that you mentioned the lesson that you learned about how to find a job. And as I'm reading from your profile here, best-selling author of the 5-Day Job Search. So relate that experience of how you were in Texas to how it helped you to be able to maybe either write about that, share that experience on, okay, I'm moving to Texas though. How am I gonna get a job in 5 days?
I was not landing jobs in 5 days in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I was like I walked into a Domino's Pizza that said, "We're hiring," on the front, and I just walked in and I applied, and then later, I heard from someone else, "Oh, anybody can become a substitute teacher here," and I was like, "Oh, let me apply and do that." So I was just, like, learning from the people I was talking to, but
Mm-hmm.
the most impactful experience I had in Texas was actually when I was moving to Boston. So I had already known 6 months in advance we were going to move for my husband's GAC. We just didn't know where.
Mm-hmm.
So my boss, one of my bosses, was well aware of that, and so I said, you have to hire somebody, and I'll train her for a month. She did, and the person she hired said she knew how to use QuickBooks because this was a bookkeeping position.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she had a lot of experience in QuickBooks. So I was like, well, I don't need to teach her how to use the software. I'll just teach her how to do specific things in our company for the
Right.
software, right? And then she was in the training, she was asking me like really basic questions. And I found out she was making more than me. So she was making 17 an hour and I was making 13 an hour when
Mm.
I knew more than her. But she was older than me and well, more experience in general because I was 22.
Mm-hmm.
So she also had a lot more confidence. I was very upset.
Uh-huh.
I was very upset. So when I moved to Boston, I was just like, people like her who are incompetent get paid more than me.
Hmm.
So when I moved to Boston, I said, I'm just going to keep applying to 50 jobs a day. And I'm going to tell people I know what I'm doing. I'm going to have a lot more confidence and courage in my search. And then within 7 days, I got an offer. And then in my second job search here in Boston, I got it in 6 days. And then in my third job search, I got it in 5. So, but
Hmm.
but it was thanks to that woman who really upset me when I found out she made more than me that I was just like, I need to step up.
So I'm gonna go ahead and read you what it says at the bottom of this card now. It says, the end of challenging times, things are looking up, a welcome relief, finding your way to a peaceful place, the end of depression or illness, travel or relocation. So it's interesting, like I said, going back here, you kind of have this golden road. And have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz? Okay, so you're familiar with Dorothy and her travels. It's like she goes into Oz naive, right? And then it's like, okay, so she goes and she has all these different experiences and she meets all these particular individuals. And one of those individuals helps her to understand courage, how to stand up for yourself, the lion. And so it's interesting that it sounds like you kind of were going on that path. Like, okay, where does this place? Texas, Oz, I don't know this. And you kind of learn. And then it takes something like you meet someone and you're like, oh, okay, this is the lesson I'm supposed to learn. I'm supposed to learn the confidence and courage and like, act like you've been here before and know this. And so then it sparked you to your next journey. So you move to um, to Boston. So when you get that job and you're refining all of these things, what inspired you to then say, I want to turn all this into a book?
I didn't want to turn it into a book. So
Mm.
I I was growing an accounting firm on the side,
Uh-huh.
with the plans to turn this business that I had on the side full time because I was getting bullied at work. I still work there. I work maybe about 15 hours a week for the same full-time pay. But my coworkers still after 5 years, they're still very passive aggressive to me.
Hmm.
But it doesn't matter because I developed more income streams that I'm not reliant on this job. I just use it to pay the bills. So one night when I was about to go to sleep, so I'm intuitive as well. I can hear voices in my head. I can hear like 10 of them.
Clairaudient, yes.
I'm very
Mhm.
clairaudient. And it was like 1 a.m. In November 2022. And I hear these voices. They said, you got to write your next book. The Everything in your life for the last 10 years has led up to this point. You need to write this book. This is everything that needs to be in the book. And these and then it was almost like all the lessons that I learned along the way that I thought had nothing to do with each other, it all fit together in like this one gigantic puzzle. I was like, wow, this is like so divine. It just all coincidentally lined
Divine
up
timing.
perfect. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting, like I said, because most people they usually are writing books about something that they have experienced, and so it's interesting because the next card here has a theme of gratitude, and the trigger statement says, "I am overwhelmed." The true statement, "I'm moving."
Trigger.
The trigger statement says, excuse me, the true statement says, "I'm moving." So when you're
Oh.
triggered, you may say, "I am overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. What's going on? I need guidance." But the true statement says that you're just moving to something different, something that's, like I said, all your cards are like this whole path. Then once again, I am moving
So,
to
like, when
something.
I thought I was doing accounting, all of a sudden I'm moving toward writing a book.
They're it's like you had to go through all these experiences, because then that's when that book is going to say this is what's going to make it a bestseller, because you're coming from a place of authenticity, something that you have experienced, something that has overwhelmed you or frustrated you, like, well, what is this, and why I found out she's making more money than me, and why? Because she's just more confident, or whatever, the all of those different experiences. And like you said, it wasn't something that you were thinking like, oh yeah, I want to write this book, so I'm going to go and have all these experiences. It was
Right.
like, uh no, I hadn't planned on that. Thank you. My life could have been a lot easier and I could have been just fine. But we all have like this purpose in our life and this journey, going back to the whole Oz, that we're supposed to reveal. So with that, at the end of the movie of Oz and Dorothy and her experience, she pulls back the curtain and she reveals what is behind about the wizard. So what is it in your experience that you would say that you've pulled back the curtain on and you now know the truth about who Annie is?
Who I am,
Mm.
that's still hard. I'm still discovering myself. But what I've come to realize is, I have always looked to other people for guidance, I think. Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
always thought other people were smarter than me, or I'd have to wait until I was 35 or 40 until I really knew what I was doing, until the imposter syndrome will stop. And then I realized that actually a lot of people who are much older than me, they don't have success not because they're older. It's simply because they say they work hard and they say they work smart,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't. They do not put in the time, they do not put in the effort. And I've come to realize if I just want to succeed, I just have to show up consistently every day and not fail to show up.
Mm. Okay. So life lessons showing up. Next question is going back to the white. Tell me something that's colorful about Annie.
Something that's colorful about me.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm, interesting. Piano, that I play piano. I started learning piano when I was 26.
26. What sparked that?
I was bored. I started making six figures, which is
Mm-hmm.
something I always wanted to. So I bought a house, right? That was yeah, I know.
Yep.
I bought the house. That
Mm-hmm.
was something I always wanted to do because my parents never owned a house. So I was like, okay, this
I
is
got
the
it.
dream, right? I
Yes.
got the dream.
Notice she's
Uh,
wearing this white shirt as well. Yes, you got your house. You got it.
interesting.
Uh-huh.
And then I started making six figures, and then I was just like, why am I so bored? I'm like bored out of my mind. I thought my life would be better when I make more money, but then I realized I didn't have anything outside of my life beyond making money. And so I
Mm.
was like, I think I need a hobby. And so I picked piano because I always wanted to learn when I was a kid.
Yes. What's your favorite song to play?
So far, my favorite song I'm learning now is the Wedding March.
The Wedding March. Interesting. Tell me more.
Well, I mean, like I always liked it. And I heard it on the radio 2 months ago, the symphony version, and then I was like, wait, why do I learn this on the piano? So I'm learning
Uh-huh.
it right now.
Yes.
It's interesting, and then I'm thinking, see, this is the first actually like popular song I'm learning because all the others are like obscure classical pieces that most people in the general public don't know. But then I'm
Mm-hmm.
learning this. I was like, hey, maybe one day I'll get invited to a wedding and I'll play this.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So, next thing that kind of came up here is patience. I can wait. Let me read you what it says here. This is the hand mudra that's for it. This mudra fortifies the liver, regulates the body temperature, and helps to balance our strong emotions and inner conflicts. Wrap the first four fingers of one hand around the ring finger of the other whilst pressing the thumb onto the middle of the palm. Everything which grows regenerates during a healing process, for instance, develops and unfolds needs a certain time. Instead of impatiently filtering our energies away, we can use the times of waiting for better things. Think of a tall, majestic tree in the prime of life and ask it to share its patience, steadfastness, perseverance, strength, and inner composure with you. You inhale its energy with long, deep breaths. My patience and inner calm increases from moment to moment. How does that resonate with you, Annie?
Oh yeah, I need more patience because um one of the things I want to do is, so a lot of people who learn piano, they start at 5 years old, and then
Yes.
by the time they're 18, they're playing at concerts all over the world and things like that. And I only started 2 years ago, so I'm like, okay, if I spend the next 13 years of my life committing to it, I'll be 40, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look forward to when I'm 40, but a lot of time there's this push pull between me. Like I wish I could play that piece now, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I know logically that like this is something that is like a 10 to 15-year endeavor to learn.
So the guidance is kind of coming through. It's going back here. And then just enjoy the journey.
Mm,
Don't rush it. Just enjoy the flow of just learning something new. Because if you quote unquote hurry up, you're right back to where you were boarding it.
mm,
And see, it's like, okay, what can I do in order to entertain myself, to relax me, and do all these, learn these different chords. And it's interesting that you picked the wedding march song. So you kind of started your journey, and you're talking about your husband, and at the time. So how is that now?
well, we have a good relationship. I think it could also use improvement in our communication. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we misunderstand each other, and then recently we've developed different political ideologies. You know, a lot of things we don't agree on politics wise. So,
Mm-hmm. So with that, so as I'm gonna show you this picture, again, because in all of your cards, there's pretty much like green. So you have the whole nature here, and the trees in the background, and then
mm,
the here the heart chakra is related to the green. So encouraging you to, in those moments, going back to the gratitude of the relationship, having a partner that you can have, and even if it's with this hand mudra, having patience
mm,
with each other, because like anything, like a marriage is definitely a journey, journeying together
hmm
forward in that sense. So but like here, acquiring a house, but cherishing home, period.
mm.
Like that's some of the things that's kind of bringing color to the life. So thinking about your business, describe it to me 3 years from now.
That's hard. Um, but hopefully, I can help millions of people land a job when the economic crisis gets even worse. When everyone's out of work and they need help and guidance, hopefully they come across me, stumble upon me somehow, and they find the advice that they need.
Okay. And so as you were reading that, I said, okay, what is the divine energy that can come and connect with Annie? And you got Rada. And what does it say?
Rediscover a lost part of yourself, experience relationship harmony and healing.
Experience relationship. Like I was just saying, going back together, redivining and connected with one another. And here's what the extended message says from Rada. Loving union, connection, and relationship harmony are key at this time. It's important to remember, though, that relationship will make you whole. Only your own love can do that. You now have the opportunity to find lost parts of yourself. Remember, we were talking about who is Annie, who was this color, as we were finally like adding to this picture. Maybe you, excuse me, maybe central aspects of the capacity to cherish yourself. Use the relationships around you, then begin to reflect the love you have for yourself. Increased romance, love, and opportunities to express divine harmony through love for all becoming apparent in your life. You desire divine love, and Radha, with her shaky parents, is here to awaken this loving connection with you now. Annie, thank you so much for being a guest on All Intuitive
Wow,
Conversation.
this is so interesting.
I do hope you have been encouraged to live smart and ascend to new levels of work life success. For individuals that say, yes, Annie is the woman for me to help encourage me on my journey, how can they reach you?
The best way is by going to annieyangfinancial.com. That's ANNIEYANG financial.com. The 5-day job search audiobook is free. So if you go to Annie Yang Financial and click on audiobook at the top, just put in your name, your email address, and then you can download it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming and being a guest. For those that have watched and been encouraged and are wanting to be a guest on this show, you can learn more on my YouTube channel or you can reach more on my website at All Intuitive Conversation. Again, this has been an All Intuitive Conversation. Until we all connect again.